Hey, what's going on, guys? Check, is this working? Okay, looks like it is. Sorry if the volume's a little bit off. I just reset this and kind of redid my setup here. Um, what do I want to talk about? Okay, yeah, let's go crowd first. Not the most productive day, but also not the worst day, right? I mean, this is pretty simple, guys. When we had a pretty good bounce off of this 299.85 spot, you guys can see a couple wicks underneath. Didn't do much else other than that. Still two weekly candle close potentials over the top of this. Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't really know what else to say here. Just had an attempt to try to get to 316.75. Looks like it rejected. I mean, obviously it rejected based off this bear candle. But once again, on pretty low vol. This name doesn't trade a ton of volume, just in general, right? I mean, I don't know why this does this from time to time. It gets rid of my volume, but 2 million, right? Roughly 2 million, which is nothing. And if you guys take a look here, I mean, it's just riding the EMAs, so it might take a little bit more time just to kind of consolidate. I told you guys that there is potential here for it to get a high tight flag, which it might get here, and then a pop, breakout hold, and then kind of continue to fill the rest of this gap. So I'm not really in a rush. I don't really care too much. It does suck. I was up like 50%, I want to say today, 55, 50%, and it pulled all the way back, and now I'm only up 21%. Worst case scenario, if this pulls all the way back down to 299.85, I'll probably take a couple more contracts. I know these are a little bit pricey, but I might be able to grab a couple more right around like 800, maybe the high sevens, mid sevens, whatever we end up getting to. And just kind of risk this 299.85, right? It's very simple in my opinion. One of the best charts on here. And then from there, let's take a look at MU. This is one that is getting a little bit worrisome, but still kind of playing this just off of a broad range, right? I talked about this having a very broad range, and what I mean by that is series of weekly candles, right, where we have kind of our double bottom here. This is going to drive me insane. One second, let's change this really quick. If you guys don't know, I change my colors all the time just based off the glare that comes from my windows, so that's why my colors look weird. But there we go. So lower gap down here. My biggest fear is this still comes down and trades to 81.50. I don't think it will. You guys kind of know we were looking for this higher low, lower high, kind of this series of weekly closes here. We finally broke above, and now it looks like we're kind of tagging underneath it. Still plenty of time for this to get back above that 105, 108 spot, so I'm not too worried. And you got to think, right? I mean, this is just a low here. This is a general area, honestly, for a higher low to occur. If we take a look at the weekly as well, we're right at the 921 on the weekly. We have the 50 SMA here as well. So could we get a bounce? Absolutely. Can it go a little bit lower? Absolutely, right? I did say I'm kind of saving some liquid cash on hand just to add into this whenever I start to see buyers step in. Just pretty important to have like that discipline and not be trigger happy just to add as this is going down. Let daily candles close. You guys will know when you know, right? I mean, it's pretty simple when you see a buyer step in and we see a big bullish bar with some good volume behind it. Selling for the most part is still, as you guys can see, right, pretty low volume. It's nothing to be super concerned with just yet. But yeah, I mean, you guys can see, right? I mean, we've had multiple times where this has done the same exact thing and it's bounced off this range where it's sold here, kind of caught, got back above 105, it broke out, sold for a higher low, kind of caught 105 again, pushed up, hit 108, kind of sold, caught 105 again, and then I thought this was the day where this would take off. I did mention to you guys I was up like 3 to 5%, and then obviously today I lost all that and I'm down like 28, 29%. It is what it is, right? I mean, I have plenty of cash, like I said, to add into this, and I can adjust that cost basis pretty quickly. But yeah, I mean, worst case scenario, like I said, is if we get like a weekly close under 105 and we start trickling down, I would say towards like this low here, right? Kind of like right around 105, 104, even 103. That's where I would start to consider maybe closing this out, as I think that this could trade towards the unfilled gap from here, right? Remember, the gap's technically starting up here, but it goes all the way down to down here at like 96, and the remainder of this unfilled gap starts from 98 to 96, right? So if we lose like 103, 104, I'll probably close, as I think that I could get better ads against this little green box, right, which is 96 to 98. I would jump in there. and then try to ride it back out, right? There's one thing I did want to bring up here really quickly. I'm going to pull it up onto the screen if I can grab it. Legal options. I want to show you guys the gamma levels real quick. I haven't really looked at gamma too much recently, especially with all the hedging that's been going on going into the elections. I think a lot of things are going to get pretty murky. You're going to see a lot of pulls to the downside where people are just being protective of their assets, right, and just hedging down, right? And there's not a lot of charts that look super bad for the downside, so you're not really seeing a lot of hedging call side. So it's pretty interesting. Everything looks relatively, I would say, murky in terms of gamma, but did want to pull this up. Let's just pull this on the screen here. Hopefully you guys can see. We do have kind of like this protective boundary here where we should be getting a bounce off 105, 104 where we are gamma positive, so we should see some buying off of that. But as we start to slip and deviate further, there is potential for this to come down to 100, right? So that kind of aligns with what I said, where we could sell, a little bit lower down into, like, I would say this box here where this little flag occurred. Maybe trickle down a little bit lower to 98, 96, right? I would rather just save my buying power for there. Unless I'm only down like 35, 40%, then I'll be happy to add in this little box here, right? I wouldn't make it that big of a deal. I would just add into that. Obviously, there would be some drawdown there, but I would, just depends on the percentage. We'll see what we end up opening in the morning. And then I talked about too data, right? I mean, if we take a look at the data here, calendars, we go to is this US only? Okay, yeah. PCE, it's tomorrow morning, and then non-farm payrolls. So those are pretty big ones, guys. And you got to think that the following week, well, I mean, it gets pretty crazy, right? We have the Fed interest rate decision, and we have the election. So window of weakness is almost done, but we're kind of going through a pretty crazy time here where things could capitulate or sell pretty aggressively. I'm not trying to scare people either, right? I mean, whole point of this was to have exposure to stuff and be able to add as we're drawing into that weakness and seeing buying, not just adding blindly, but at least having exposure to the downside, or I'm sorry, to the upside on some of these names that have performed well and are still looking really good. But there is potential for MEU to seep down into 100. So we'll just see. I'll just see what percentage it is. Kind of go from there. Crowd is a little bit more objective. So if it breaks under 299.85, I'll be out of that one and reassess that. So that's pretty cut and dry. And then if I talked to you guys about like short side, I mean, I'm just going to cover it real quick. Remember, I've been talking about this kind of being like a lower high, kind of leading into 225, maybe this high up here. But really, I was looking for a break underneath this higher low trend line and then confirming under 217.37. We got a pretty bearish print today, right, where we kind of pushed up, got around the highs. I don't want to say this is a head and shoulders because I really don't pay attention to that, but really nasty candle and failure to make a new high. I mean, it's very simple. We have like a shooting star here where we could see continuation underneath this low, and that might give us that kind of ground to break that higher low trend line. Remember, that's subjective, so that's not really like, hey, the trend line broke. That means, it doesn't really matter, right? We've seen trend lines like this, for example, and these guys probably got trapped pretty hard, right? So it's not really confirming unless a level breaks. So if we start to break under this higher low here at 217, right, I think I would love to see it retest that. I would be looking once again for those 212 puts, maybe even 209 for 1115. This looks a lot better than QQQ. I still have those 470 puts or the 471s for 11. I think it's 1107. I've just held on to them, right? I mean, I did say if we got a strong close over 496, I would hold them, but we really didn't make a new high, and the volume wasn't really anything amazing. So I did hold on to them, and of course, right? I mean, we kind of closed right on 496 today. And then once again, we're pushing down to 492, so those contracts should be green. If you guys take a look at the weekly, this looks like a trap candle, right? 2 weeks in a row where we have a sweep over the top of 496, sweep over top of 496, and this one opened above, right? Swept over, and now it looks like we can get a pretty deep close underneath it. So we'll see what ends up happening. I think we could maybe push 492 if Apple, Amazon report pretty poorly. I think we can even get down to 488 this week, and that would be a disgusting weekly candle. And then maybe then I would, entertain a size, and I've talked about this. If we can somehow get underneath this old progression gap below where we've seen multiple bounces, I think we can get a retest and then short this down to either 481 or 478, right? I think, and then even then, right, we have a whole new trade as we break Let's say we get a lower high here. I think as we break underneath 478, and there's another trade there, and then ultimately 471 is what I'm targeting. So there could be multiple trades on this one. It just hasn't set up yet until things start to confirm a little bit better. And ideally, right, I mean, the earnings and the poor, and it's not like catastrophic, guys. This isn't catastrophic. This would still be a really nice higher low to take till end of year. I probably wouldn't take QQQ. I'd probably look at other underlying names and just rock with the swings I have. But this would still be a healthy pullback, regardless of what Twitter says. But yeah, I mean, this really doesn't get, super comfy and confirming unless we break under 488 and then 479. Like I said, under 479 to get pretty aggressive and target this pretty heavily. I think that 7 points pretty easy and pretty, I don't want to say guarantee, I'll never say that, but I mean, if we took a look at SMCI, somebody said a God candle was guaranteed, and look what happened. Kind of went the other way, right? So I'm never going to guarantee anything, but until then, right, until things start to confirm on QQQ, I think IWM is just the better chart. 217 breaking base under that. Obviously a closure underneath that trend line. I think this one's good, and I would just target 212. Technically 211.64, but 212 is the money shot. Also, just real quick, I started some Roku contracts today, or not contracts, I'm sorry, some shares today. Did go a little bit lower than I would have liked, but if I'm being honest, I'm comfortable risking kind of down into this zone here, right? There was like a little gap that formed here. I think I'm just willing to risk that. I wanted to see it kind of sell down and really kind of distribute off of the 78.61, sell down into 70.20 for like an SOS and then breach the gap. And that was the reason for me taking this. I got a pretty good fill at 70.20. Obviously I took some at 72, but this sold down into that 67 spot. So if we start to like kind of close underneath that, I'll just close those shares. It won't be too big of a loss on that. Definitely worth the stab though. Only other name I'm really looking at, guys, is MSTR from like the earnings catalyst stuff going on. The whole Bitcoin thing and how they're going to be using cash to rebuy Bitcoin is literally a money glitch, if you guys don't know. And if you guys don't know as well, monthly candle closes tomorrow. And this is really important, right? We had a key breakout here that never really got retested. So if this can, retest 200, I'm going to be longing contracts and shares. But this looks like it could just retest the simple weekly high up here, right? And there's obviously a footprint candle that occurred up here with some heavy volume that you could say, kind of consider the retest of 200 on the daily. But this now sold into 227.15, which was that old high, and got a really nice bounce, right? You guys can see this here on the 4-hour hourly does some justice as well. Big buyer there. So if we can kind of open around 227, I might take some contracts for a move back up to 250, 260, maybe 2 weeks out or so. Just want to see where it opens. Nothing set in stone yet, but it's definitely something I'll be watching tomorrow. And that's really it, guys. This is a long one. I don't mean to be talking this long, but very, very simple. Once again, pretty straightforward. MU, crowd. We have Intel reporting tomorrow as well, guys. I mean, this one, I would say this is kind of make or break, right? If we get another low on this, I don't think I'll trade this again for a long time, but really holding this earnings gap high pretty nicely, right around there, 21.98. We've been consolidating against us. The weekly looks fantastic. The weekly looks fantastic for a pop. And, ideally this kind of saves semis right now because the SMCI obviously did some damage across the entire board. And really, I'd be surprised if anyone was green today. The whole market bled, right? It's just kind of a market-wide thing that occurred today. So ideally, just kind of a bounce back day tomorrow. INTC does well, kind of helps out chips here. But I would love to see this, at the very least, pushed back up to 24.59 base that, and then size in, add till, whatever, and then ideally we can push to 29. Or, right, picture perfect world, we just get a shot up to 29 or 29. But yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Just wanted to cover that really quickly. Hope everyone has a good night. Once again, I appreciate all the patience. I know it's been a slow one, but we're almost at the end of it. We pretty much got a week left, right? Just finish out this week strong. Or just kind of wait, to be honest. And then once we get elections and FOMC out of the way, I think things will really start to clear up, right? And it's always good to kind of have two-way setups, in my opinion. And I do have the IWM or QQQ position just in case the market sells into the election or post-election. And then once again, right, I have the swings I think that will pay pretty well. Like crowd, guys, I haven't even talked about crowd. Like this high up here that breached this gap was at 1700. Average right now is about 800, so that would be a huge gain on that. If we can even just push 323, if we manage to push up to 342, 350, contracts will be pushing like 3,000 per, right? So I mean, there could be a huge gainer here on crowd. So like, there's just a lot of opportunity with the names that I've been watching, and there's a reason I've been watching them, right? MU as well. Obviously the risk is getting a little bit undefined here, but still a healthy chart in my opinion. It's based on the weekly, and once again, if we can get something, let's just say our average is like right around 105. I mean, that's a huge move as well. Like, this has tons of potential, and there's a reason I'm watching these guys and kind of locking in on these. But yeah, that's pretty much going to be it. I'll go ahead and post this to YouTube. I'll post it for the chat. But yeah, Thursday we'll see what INTC does. Really not looking to do too much else besides that. I'll keep an eye on MSTR. I'll obviously look at crowd, look at MU. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. We'll see what Friday ends up bringing, and then from there, we'll see if we need to go short or not. See you guys.